was about a message from the light beings, the state of the world as we see it. And that was a powerful webinar. It's private. It's not something that's publicized. It's something you have to sign up for. Okay, and you can find it on my website, lindadeir.com. Go down to you'll see the trailers for the live events and the webinar for $29 right there. You can play the little trailer a couple minutes long and see what that's really all about. And then it'll navigate you to the page where you can purchase it if you guys are interested. All right. So the last Saturday of the month is consumed with that 1 hour webinar that we do at 1 p.m. instead of the reading. Okay. So I am Linda Deir. And 2 Saturdays ago, I read from chapter 7 of my true life story, Guided. Her spirit guide angels were her best friends and life coaches. I read about a tsunami of change. A big shift was taking place. The prophecy my guides warned me about throughout my childhood had finally played out. Life will get better for you as you get older, if you can make it through childhood. It was 1966, and I sensed a freedom for me was nearing closer. I felt it coming on the horizon. My life was finally making some sense. It was coming together in strange ways. Today, I will be reading chapter 8. The day I got out alive. The first thing I experienced is that I could breathe. Really breathe. Once I started breathing, I couldn't stop. It was similar to someone who has panic attacks. Until this unexpectedly happened, I didn't even realize I had been holding my breath. I had been holding my breath my entire life. So sit back and relax as I tell this story about despite family dysfunction, my spirit guides took me on one journey after another that led me to a greater understanding of myself. Okay, so I'm going to be reading from Guided. It's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook format on Amazon. It's amazing to read your story again, especially in the years where the trauma was so intense, all right? For all of you who have experienced bullies, being abused, and all that type of thing, all right? So here I go. The day I got out alive, chapter 8. On December 17th, 1968, Alex and I were married in Reno, Nevada, at the Justice of the Peace. My mom and dad and Alex's mom and dad were present. I was 16 years old and Alex was 17, so we needed parental consent. My mom asked me if I told Alex about my bedwetting problem yet. Without hesitation, I told her I didn't have that problem anymore. And to my surprise, I didn't. Without any effort on my part, it completely stopped the day I left home, and it never happened again. This was the first time I had solid evidence of just how toxic that environment really was throughout my early life. Awareness. When words come through without any thought and you just blurt them out, this is telepathic communication, direct from your guides. Never make the mistake that this came from you. It came through you. In the case mentioned above, I was being notified by my guides that this childhood trauma was behind me. By my mid-30s, I would discover that what causes someone to wet the bed is fear of the dominant parent. It's an emotional release. No wonder I couldn't stop it, and why it stopped the moment I got away from her once and for all. Alex and I moved to Folsom, and we went to Folsom High School while Alex continued to hold down 2 jobs. Our honeymoon was a weekend in Lake Tahoe. We took Larry, my little brother, with us so he would understand that we were looking out for him, even if he couldn't come live with us yet. My life had become fantastic. Independence was the most amazing feeling, and I knew that life would only get better from here on out as I recalled my guide's words. Life will get better for you as you get older, if you can make it through childhood. They were right. I thanked my guides for guiding me through the riskiest part of my life, my childhood. Nothing could ever be that bad again, and it never has been. I couldn't believe I got out alive. I wasn't worried about anything, even when we had no food and I was really hungry because I was pregnant. Alex would always bring me food from work so I could eat. I knew we would be all right. Life was peaceful and happy. Alex had to hitchhike to work 30 miles each day because we didn't have a car, but he didn't mind it at all. Alex did what it took and wasn't spoiled like the other kids I had known. I wasn't getting the nutritional supplements I needed, nor did I have the right diet, which only depleted me throughout my pregnancy. My mother told me that the baby was going to be born deformed. To some degree, I was very concerned she might be right from the time she kicked me in the stomach in the kitchen. Alex was happy to be moving forward with his life too. We felt strong together. We were in heaven. We both appreciated what we had. Alex loved my dad and did not like my mother. Dad would stop by with Mom to visit every now and then and try to give me money for food, and Mom would grab it back from me. These visits were infrequent, and each time Dad would sneak a $20 bill into something where I would find it later without Mom knowing. Learning. Getting out of an abusive, repressive life is a real accomplishment. Once you do, you need to revisit your life to put the pieces back together again. That may be the hardest thing you will ever have to do. It was for me. I appreciate everything my guides did for me going this far. It's gratitude that makes my life so special now. My mother was selfish and abusive, and she was also insanely controlling. An example of that was when Mom decided Alex needed a car to go to work. One day she shows up with a white Ford Falcon and told Alex, "This is your car." Then, as our amazement at our good fortune sunk in, she presented a payment plan with interest to pay her back. She also told Alex the type of insurance he would be required to carry. She insisted that this car was the best car for us and we damn well better take good care of it. Alex immediately became offended and told her he never asked her for a car and she could take it and shove it. Mom looked at me and asked if I was going to allow him to speak to her like that. And I said I was. Alex and I never felt desperate or broke. We were just going through what it took to get on our feet by ourselves without strings. I knew Mom was concerned and trying to help, but her typical pushy and controlling approach didn't cut it with Alex. He never allowed anyone to push him around, especially her. I was proud of him. Mom, on the other hand, was so angry with him she cut off all visits and communication. She also found a special way to let us know she was angry. My baby shower was planned before the car incident. The neighbors and my mom were arranging it. However, on the day of the baby shower, Mom was a no-show. Everyone asked me where she was, but I shined it on, not saying anything about her and Alex butting heads. For some reason, I felt really hurt by her abandonment. Maybe it was the final string being cut that made it so painful for me. In any case, the lines were now drawn between us, and there was no longer any question about that. Alex and I were going to be fine without her around. I would miss my dad, but fortunately, none of this stopped Larry, my little brother, from coming around. In July 1969, I was still 16 years old when Cindy was born. She was perfectly healthy with no signs of damage from my mother having kicked me. Not only was she healthy, she was beautiful. However, the first time I held Cindy, the worst feeling came over me. I felt that I must have been out of my mind to bring her into a world like this. In that moment, I realized that the world was an awful place for an innocent new life like the one I held in my arms. Here I was, only 16 years old, and I had already learned what a dysfunctional and evil place this world could be. I was shocked at what I was feeling, but it was brutally honest and true. I was sick inside, and I'm not sure anyone can understand what I felt in that moment. I vowed to never have another child, and I didn't. I never did. While I was fine being a mom, Alex didn't connect with the new baby situation. He was focused on working all the time and going to school. Although he was doing his best, after Cindy was born, something changed with how I saw him. He was not capable, after all. In fact, he came up short. For me, having Cindy was my wake-up call. All of a sudden, I saw things more clearly than I ever had before. Still a child myself, in just 8 months, I had gone from escaping a childhood of persecution to bringing a child into this world. After Cindy was born, I was seriously depressed. I didn't understand any of this, but with Cindy crying all the time and Alex on edge, there was no room for my problem. Day after day, for about 6 months, I woke up with that same old depressing feeling. I never told anyone about it, even though it was an incredible burden. Everything changed after Cindy was born. Around the time she was born, Alex managed to get a reliable used car. While it made things a little easier on him, it didn't help much with the situation at home. Alex was so exhausted that when Cindy cried, he would get mad and impatient. I didn't like it when she cried either, so every time she cried, I picked her up. That was a bad choice because she became very demanding. At my wit's end, I had spoiled her. I would walk her in her stroller for miles at a time so she would stop crying. As the months went by, her crying developed into screaming. She would wake up screaming out of a dead sleep. I took her to the doctor and asked her what he could do, and he said she had colic. He said there was nothing that could be done and that she would just have to outgrow it. So I continued walking her in the stroller until I literally wore the wheels off. Even the neighbors said they had never heard such extreme crying. Finally, at about 8 months old, she stopped crying. However, she had become so spoiled by my continually picking her up that it took her forever to sleep through the night. I held her so much that by 8 months old, she would no longer drink from her baby bottle. She had become used to grabbing my glass from me and drinking my water. At night in her crib, she would unscrew the top of her baby bottle and drink it like from right out of a glass. So that's how used to it she was. Learning, no matter who you are, having a child changes you. Maybe for the first time in your life, the focus is off you. Once you experience this, you can never go back. This is when many mothers take their have their initial contact with their guides. After all, they just brought someone in from the other side, one of them. Mother's intuition is really your guides helping you. While I was going to night school, Larry would come down in his dune buggy to babysit Cindy. He loved his niece. Cindy became very possessive of him. He spoiled her rotten. I never had to worry about her when he took care of her, even though he was only 15 years old. He was better at taking care of her when I had to go to school than Alex was. Alex didn't understand the father role, since his father hadn't been much of an example for him. Other than Larry, in those early days, when I was going to night school, I had no help raising Cindy. Everything was on me. I took this responsibility very seriously, which caused me to be overprotective and very strict. Since she was going to be my only child, I had to be sure to get it right. Her well-being influenced everything I would be doing going forward. Parenting her was the most important obligation I had. I wanted to do my very best to raise her and to be able to give her the things that would make her shine. When Cindy was 9 months old, I started teaching her to swim. She took to it like a fish. She learned to hold her breath and fearlessly swim underwater with me. I loved that time with her. She was doing great in every way. She was swimming before she could even walk. Although Alex wasn't very successful as a father, he was doing pretty well as a husband and provider. He had enough money to buy me a car, but we weren't sure what kind of car to get. We looked around and thought maybe buying a Plymouth Duster, but the Plymouth Roadrunner was just a little bit more money and a lot more fun. You can see where this is going. So Alex bought me my first car, a brand new red and black Plymouth Roadrunner, a 440 cubic V8 muscle car. I didn't even have a driver's license yet or know how to drive. To learn, I got my neighbor to watch Cindy so I could take the car out by myself. I went on roads with no traffic and taught myself to drive that Hurst 4-speed stick shift. There was a trick to shifting the gears in perfect sync with the clutch, and I figured it out and liked it. Larry loved the new car, and Alex was rightfully proud of it. That car was the second thing we bought on credit. The first thing was our refrigerator. I drove the car for about 6 months. Then I got my driver's license when I turned 18. Life was indeed getting better for me as I got older, just like my guides said it would. Of course, not everything had changed. There was a big Texan girl in my night school class who had a baby about the same age as Cindy. She was mean and for some reason would always say nasty things about my baby and husband. After a couple of months, I told her to stop it, but she kept doing it. You can probably see where this is going. Finally, she went over the line. So one night I interrupted her as she was leaving class and I told her she had dissed my family for the last time. She was a big girl and I was small and slender. She sneered and asked what I was going to do about it. In response, I showed her what I had learned from the kids in Sacramento. I hadn't planned to say anything to Alex, but the next day, she and her husband came to our house. Alex answered the door to find this fellow and his beat-up wife. She looked terrible. The husband said I had done this to his wife. Alex looked over at me and I told him she had it coming because she wouldn't stop talking badly about him and Cindy. Alex looked back at her husband and said that apparently she had it coming. He suggested that maybe she learned some manners. Apparently, the husband had not gotten the whole story. He shook his head, told his wife to get back in the car. They left, and I never saw her at night school again. I had pretty easily won the fight, but I realized fighting was no longer the way to handle things. I had a family now, and I needed to act like an adult. Oh man, I actually felt remorse because I was going to miss those fighting days. I only fought when it was necessary, but I knew I had to find new solutions. Interestingly, this was almost an exact replay of the situation with the girl who used to beat up Larry. But this time I learned the lesson. I saw it as a karmic cycle of life playing out that I needed to break. 2 years after I left home, I found my little brother started using drugs. He just couldn't cope in an environment without me acting as his buffer. He was losing his way. I never went near drugs, but unlike me, he found drugs enticing. He started showing up at our house high, sometimes on mescaline and sometimes on other things. We didn't know what to say to him, so we provided what we felt he really needed, and that is support without judging him. Meanwhile, at 18, Alex started his apprenticeship program with the Carpenters Union. He got hired as a laborer on a framing crew. He was exhilarated to have that job. Larry told Dad about Alex's new job, and Dad took us out to lunch to celebrate. Dad was truly happy for us. That is when Dad started calling Alex his son. Alex loved it. He had always wanted respect from my dad. Dad really took Alex under his wing, though not always in the best way. For example, he would tell Alex not to do woman's chores. That was pretty chauvinistic, but that wasn't my dad's intent. It was about camaraderie with Alex. That was a real powerful time between Dad and Alex. Tip: you know when you are on the right track because everything magically falls into place. You are being guided. You will see through reading this story, it's easier to start something new than it is to change. Why is that? It's because people tend to resist change, thinking they might lose something. The resistance is what makes change hard. Otherwise, starting something new and change would be equally as exciting. All right, you guys, and I'm going to put a little announcement out for next Saturday's reading. Next Saturday, June 13th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, I will be reading to you from chapter 9 of Guided. Success comes fast and furious. Even though things were working out well, my guides had a surprise in store for me. Out of the blue, I had an amazing realization that things were going to be headed in a new direction. I refer to age 19 as the best year of my life, specifically because of this crystal clear clarity my guides sent me. It was an instant insight, and I knew I had to find my own way without Alex. They made it clear that we had no long-term future together. But I didn't see why at the time. So until then, remember, you have help. You are never alone and always being guided.